Saad in Pakistan, welcome back.
Hey, Matt, how are you doing? Good to meet you guys. Good to talk to you again.
Are you going to donate $1,100 right now?
Right now,
they're standing in front of me, just like brushing off their shoulders, and I'm being trash talked here. All right. Anyway, we'll get to the call because that's more important. Thanks for waiting.
Sorry for your.
No problem. Well, I wanted you first in the audience and all of you guys. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be on you. Before we start, and also wanted to personally apologize to you, Matt, for how things ended last time. So I hope you're cool.
You don't owe me an apology at all. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're apologizing, but you don't. You're talking about what you're convinced of and what you're not. And I pointed out where something that we're kind of trying to apologize for was actually repugnant. Unless you've changed your mind and are now convinced that there is actually a problem with having a 9-year-old become betrothed to a grown adult, unless you've changed your mind on that, I don't even understand what good an apology would do. If I've convinced you that that's a bad idea, well, then I would understand an apology.
Well, honestly, so it's become a very controversial subject, so I'm not really an expert on that, and I'd rather not go there.
You don't need to be in... No.
That's fine. We don't need to make it about that.
I'm not going to try and make this whole call about that again, but that's a cop-out. You don't need to be an expert to come to the realization that it is morally repugnant to betroth a 9-year-old girl to an adult. If you're not expert enough in morality to recognize that that's a problem, then your lack of expertise on morality is the only thing that should be discussed. But I'll set that aside because you want to talk about something else.
Yeah, I mean, we could always touch on that later because there's so much, especially when it concerns hadith, there's a lot of discrepancies even in what's known as the...
No. It's really simple. Is it morally permissible to betroth a 9-year-old to a grown man?
I guess in today's day and age, it's not. I agree with you there.
And what day and age was it and why?
I really don't know. Maybe the customs of that time were different, and maybe I'm not even sure. That's something that I'd rather not talk about.
I know you'd rather not talk about it because you don't have an explanation, and it preys upon your mind that you could in fact be wrong about this, and that is a problem for Islam. That is why. This to me, if I found out that the God I worshipped was okay with betrothing kids to adults, I would be spending my time on nothing else until I came up with an explanation for that.
Yeah, that's a good answer to that.
So what did you spend your time on? Let's continue.
Well, I just felt like, the past few weeks since, we've been, since the show, since my last conversation with you, I've spoken to a few friends and I've kind of went on a journey of my, kind of rediscovering myself in that time and age. And I kind of felt like, it's true. It's throughout my life, even though I've been raised Muslim in Pakistan and I've traveled over the world, I've seen and experienced many different people and many different cultures. There's a lot of things growing up in Islam that I appreciated about it. There's a lot of things that I felt like phony scholars and phony teachers would tell me, and I would disagree with them. So I was always questioning a lot of things that were supposedly part of my faith, but later on I realized they weren't. And I can tell you this much: for me, the reason why I'm calling, why I feel like it's good to have a belief system, an organized religion, and why? Because it's kind of gives you a code of life. It's
We went through this last time you called, where your basic argument was praying 5 times a day and having the structure of a religion provided people with a structured life that was beneficial to them. Did I in any way suggest that wasn't the case?
No,
okay.
That was
so.
good. You said
but my only concern is whether or not the religious claims are true, not whether or not they provide a benefit. I'm perfectly willing to accept that a religiously structured life, an externally structured life, certainly benefits some people. There are people who are incapable of structuring their life without help from somebody else. And so they'll rely on a religious structure. They even rely on secular humanist manifesto to help structure. They rely on their work to be the foundation that structures and guides their life. They may depend on a partner to provide that sort of thing. None of that is relevant at all to whether or not Islam is true, because that structure exists within Christendom, within Hinduism, within self-help gurus that, make millions of dollars standing up telling, Prisons? Some people are going to do better in prison than they are out. That is all completely irrelevant to whether or not the underlying claims of the religion are true, right?
That's true, but don't you see that throughout history that a lot of people? I mean, it's interesting when I researched a lot of history, when I did a lot of cross comparative religious studies, and I read books by Karen Armstrong called History of God. It's a really interesting book that you should read if you have the time. I realized how Islam has been the fastest growing religion in the world. It's surprisingly why a lot of people. I mean, look at Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, all of these guys. They were impressed by the faith for some reason.
I don't care.
They found some sort of.
I don't care. The truth of a religion is not impacted in any way by the number of people believe it, how quickly it spreads, how confident they are that it's true. None of those things are relevant. That's not impacted in any way by the structure that somebody gets out of it or the personal well-being and benefits that they feel they want to attribute to their religion. All of these things you're raising are completely irrelevant to whether or not the religion is true. Do you have anything that speaks to the truth of the religion?
Well, one thing both Matt, you and me, and can agree on is that I've tried to find through my life and even recently, I tried to find some sort of scientific evidence that could, at the end of the day, the foundation of all religions, whether it's Islam, Judaism, Christianity, any of those monotheistic faiths that are very popular, is the foundation belief that there is a God, right? That there's a creator in the universe that is true, as that revealed that sent revelations to prophets, and then these books came, and certain people, part of the world believe a certain belief, certain sections believe another belief, and then constantly argue with each other, which is right. So the one thing that I have a hard time, is like you, is figure out on a scientific or any sort of empirical way that God truly exists. Now, one of my friends did mention something called the Higgs something principle. Now, I'm not really an expert in physics or quantum physics, so I really don't know how much of that stuff is true. But there are arguments that people will say all the time, and you've had different callers.
I want to make sure I'm understanding. I want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you saying that you and I agree that there is not currently scientific evidence for God or evidence for God that should be compelling?
Unfortunately, I'd like to say I would love to believe that there is, but only reason why I believe that most people, all world, including me, believe in God is because it's part of our belief and it's blind faith.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
So you're admitting that you believe something without good reason. Why are you bothering to talk to us? Because I'm only going to be convinced by good reasons.
Well, I want to ask you, how can you prove a supernatural being? The problem is,
I don't think you can. I'm on record repeatedly pointing out that I know of no way anyone could ever confirm supernatural action or causation in any way. But that's not a problem with my standards of evidence. That's a problem with supernatural claims. Just because you can claim something and somebody doesn't know how you could demonstrate it's true doesn't mean that the problem's on their end, because it may not be true.
And presumably you could pray to the God and find out how to do it.
How do I prove that there are Earth-like descendants of alligators on Alpha Centauri, or a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri? I can't prove that. That doesn't tell you whether or not it's believable.
Well, I feel like, there's one way I feel like some people have kind of experienced what they would necessarily call God, and I feel like I've kind of experienced it that way. It's
Me
not
too.
necessarily through prayer.
Me too. And then I recognized that I had no justification for attributing my experience to a God. What justification do you have for attributing the experience that you credit God with actually being God? You've already acknowledged you don't have that information.
What information do you know about Sufism? Have you ever read anything by Rumi? Jalaluddin Rumi is a famous poet philosopher.
No, I know very little about Sufism specifically. But I can tell you this: if Sufism had reliable evidence that would allow somebody to show the supernatural exists, we'd all fucking know. It'd be on the front page of every paper. It'd be the Templeton Foundation would stop investigating Christian prayer and they'd be going after Sufis. It would be Nobel Prize worthy. There's nothing that you can point to that some Muslim scholar wrote that is going to be able to confirm supernatural causation that the whole world would not already have known about. Or at a minimum, the scientific community.
Or it had to be a really good conspiracy that they hid that.
I mean, there's no, well, you can't have a good conspiracy if Saad knows it because he's getting ready to tell us. So what is it that confirms the supernatural?
You know, honestly, that's good. In my opinion, I feel like you need, honestly speaking, if we just ignore, if we just look at the fact that philosophically, I mean, I don't know. I've always felt like when you meditate, like the previous caller said, and when you meditate, and especially the Sufi way of doing it, I've been doing it recently, and feel like you certainly elevate yourself to a very higher plane.
No,
I feel like you.
I don't even know what higher plane. I don't even know what higher plane means. That is language that people use to describe things that they can't really describe. Hey, you know how when you're having an orgasm after 12 hours of tantric sex, you know how that makes you feel like you're on another plane? I could say that.
And it would
make
yeah.
You know how when you drop acid and you sit around and you stare at cartoons on TV and then they appear to come to life and you get this euphoric kind of shocky feeling? I could say that too. But it doesn't mean I've reached a higher plane. It just means that I'm talking about something that is indescribable, and I'm using whatever glurgy language I have access to. But I don't know what higher plane means. And I don't know that anybody has actually ever reached it.
I guess it's some sort of spiritual high. I'll be honest with you. Now that I'm going to be sidetracking here for a bit, and I don't know if anyone here is a fan of this, and I think you mentioned it last time too on your show. The best high I feel these days is when I smoke hookah, the shisha, the water pipe.
Okay. You go, boy.
Amazing. You guys should try.
That's cool. I haven't had that high. If I were to have that high, would it teach me what higher plane and spirituality means, and would I come to an understanding of God? Or would I just look at it and say, I was fucking high?
The funny thing, Matt, so the funny thing is, I'm saying it half jokingly because it's possibly true that, the hookah is so popular in the Middle East.
Yes.
It's very possible that Muslims invented it, and maybe they were getting a buzz out of it, and maybe they were experiencing God.
Yes, and it doesn't just apply. It doesn't just apply to your religion. If you look at Christianity, when you look at the Book of Revelation, John of Patmos, who was on an island supposedly full of mushrooms, is having these visions that make no sense. So much so that when they were putting the Bible together, Revelation, not the Beatles album, Revelation almost didn't get included in the Bible because there were some Christians who felt that it read like nonsense. It's all this metaphor. I mean, it reads like an acid trip. It reads like a mushroom trip for a great portion of it. Now, does that mean that Christianity was founded on visions from drugs? Not necessarily. Certainly can't rule it out as a possibility. When you talk about, for example, Paul in Christianity talks about the people who saw Jesus after he was risen. This came up during the debate, and I'll talk more about it tomorrow. But it's like, first he appeared to Mary Magdalene, then the 12, and then the 500, and lastly then to James, and then to me. Well, that's Paul making a claim. I have not heard from the 12, Mary Magdalene, the 500, or James. And now I'm just taking Paul's word for it that all these people all saw Jesus. But Paul describes his experience of meeting the risen Jesus as he was blinded and heard a voice on a road where his companions didn't see anybody. Now, doesn't that sound a lot like, I don't know, a schizotypical break from reality?
Epileptic seizure.
Aren't there countless medical conditions that might account for that. And if he's my primary source and he's the source that's telling me about these others, that's a problem. And similarly, I have no idea what Muhammad was smoking when he decided to transcribe the Quran. I don't know if he was smoking anything. I don't have any way to investigate this. I don't know if what he saw was real. I don't, all I can look at is judge what I'm told from history. And there's no single historical document that has ever or could ever confirm supernatural causation. That's just not the way demonstrations work, because at that point it's all a story that somebody's telling, and a story you can't investigate.
We have ample stories of that sort of thing, and they're all fiction.
Now,
as far as
I'm not saying, oh, Islam is garbage because it's all a drug-fueled hallucination. I'm not saying that. I'm just given all the possibilities. I don't know how anybody ruled that out, and even the failure to rule that out does not mean that Islam is true. You have to provide evidence for it, and that's why I was asking about evidence of the supernatural. And you want to go to historical documents from Sufism. Well, that's just somebody describing their meditation, right? And how they felt?
Well, yeah, what these guys do is they really go into a lot of deep thought. There's music involved in it. In fact, a lot of the music from Pakistan,
Pink Floyd.
If you look at a lot of pop, there's bands in Pakistan who've been inspired by Pink Floyd.
Of course they were. There are bands everywhere who were inspired by Pink Floyd.
But this sort of description reminds me of our earlier caller that said, well, the dream confirms it, right? And altered states are not really evidence, right?
I've heard dreams that I've spoken to sheikhs, and the sheikhs have told me that they've seen Muhammad in their dreams. I've spoken to Christians, and they've said they've seen Jesus in their dreams. So the issue here is when you have a strong belief in something, you're going to be always thinking about it.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
And I would assume that you would agree that because we get these reports from different religions, and there's no way to distinguish which of them is actually correct, they cannot all be correct, but they could all be false. And so what's the reasonable position to come to when you hear multiple competing claims of revelation from different religions? Isn't it most reasonable to say, I do not have sufficient information to accept that any of them are correct, right?
Well, until there is sufficient reliable evidence, it's all blind faith, and some people are comfortable with it, like I am.
Well, okay, why would you be comfortable with blind faith? I know that you know that blind faith can lead you to things that aren't true. So blind faith is not a reliable path to truth. So don't you care whether or not your beliefs are true?
Well, I do, because at the end of the fundamental reasoning behind my faith is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, that there is no God but God and Muhammad is a messenger. That's the creed, the Islamic creed. So if I believe in that, then everything else has to be true too, because this is what I believe in. And
you believe Jesus was the Son of God?
No, I don't. No, Muslims do not believe Jesus is the Son of God.
I know Muslims don't, but you just said you had to believe everything, and that's the problem with faith, is that if you exercise faith in the Quran and the Hadith, then why can't you also exercise faith with regard to the Bible and just accept Jesus? Because aren't those on equivalent footing? You've just demonstrated and noted that you don't have the evidence that would show you which one is correct, and so you're just taking it on faith. Well, I can take either one of those on faith, right?
It's true. Okay, let's assume number one.
But
you're just taking it on faith.
Hang on. If I can take both of them on faith, both of them can't be true, right?
Well, you read the Quran, then you decide for yourself which one makes more sense to you.
No, that's not what I asked. Here's two religions. I could take either one of them on blind faith. They cannot both be true, correct?
Well, that's one way to look at it. But
no, that is the way to look at it. Come on now, let's be honest. Christianity and Islam cannot both be true, correct? Because one of them claims that Jesus was the son of... Both of them cannot be true, correct?
Agreed with you.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have two religions.
One of them has to be true.
One of them, at least one of them has to not be true. They could both not be true. But
exactly,
I could accept either of them on faith, right?
Yes, you can.
And that means that faith is not a reliable path to truth, so I would need something else. So what is the something else that would make Islam reasonable and Christianity unreasonable?
The funny thing is that's unresolved mysteries of the universe. I wish there was a way that you could,
Me too.
God would appear and show everyone.
But here's the problem.
We wouldn't be having this discussion, but maybe this is a good thing that we are. It leads to some really interesting phone calls.
Here's the real problem. You said you care whether or not your beliefs are true. And if you truly care whether or not your beliefs are true, then it's incumbent upon you to come up with a mechanism to distinguish between those two and all the others, but we're just starting with those two. And if you cannot come up with that mechanism, then the only rational position is I cannot accept either of them because I don't have sufficient reason to distinguish between them. And yet you simultaneously claim that you care about whether your beliefs are true, and yet you're just going to go ahead and accept Islam on blind faith. Do you see the contradiction there?
Well, that's a very good point you brought out. What I'm trying to say is that my reason for believing in Islam is just when I was in school, when I was trying to actually get my question answered from God, and I spoke to a teacher of Islamic studies. He told me that everything else in Islam is based on reasonable logic, according to his and my opinion. And but the only thing that that there is Tawheed is blind faith. Tawheed basically means belief in one God. That's the only thing. Blind faith. I don't know.
Let me say something.
I don't know.
About faith, and that is, I consider it a good way to be wrong, and the reason is that of all the different claims you can make, most of them are going to be wrong. And so, since faith can support anything at all, you're very likely going to be led to the wrong conclusion from faith. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
And this is why when somebody tells me that they care if their beliefs are true, and then they turn around and say they're willing to accept something on blind faith, I know that they're not being honest with me or honest with themselves. Because if you care about whether your beliefs are true, you cannot accept things on faith, because faith isn't a pathway to truth. Faith is a pathway to being wrong, as Don pointed out, more likely than it is to being right. Like if I pull out a dollar bill out of my wallet and I look at the serial number, and you could take it on faith that the number's 8675309, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're almost certainly going to be wrong. It is. It's Tommy Two-Tone, Jenny, okay. Don't lose that number. But
I'm a big 80s fan. Just to let you know, I'm a huge I grew up on the 80s. I am a huge Knight Rider, Airwolf.
Okay. Shows. But if I told you that I had a dollar bill that had 8675309 as its serial number, do you know that I'm wrong?
You could be wrong.
But am I wrong?
And let's see.
But am I wrong?
See, Matt, let me put it this way. I think the best way to answer your question is, for example, like you brought about your parents, and you talk about people who we necessarily call our loved friends, their family and friends. I'm friends. I have really good friends, and I have faith in my parents because of years of spending time with them and years of earning their trust and earning. So all of those things leads me to believe that yes, they can't be wrong. Or they can't prove it because I have so much faith in them. I don't need to test my mother and my father's faith.
You should.
Trust in a scientific. I have. My mother and my father, thankfully, have been amazing. They've been there for me my entire life, and I honestly owe them a debt of gratitude.
So you have evidence for the character of your parents.
See, what you should be doing is proportioning your confidence to the evidence. So there are people that I've met in my life. A couple of people, I won't name them, who were both very good friends of mine, and I trusted both of them very much. And it turns out both of them were megalomaniacal, narcissistic, sociopathic liars who were taking advantage of me, and I did not know that was going on until I had sufficient evidence for it. So when I say that I love someone and trust someone, I'm also saying, to the extent that I understand them, I understand this to be the character they've represented to me. I have another friend who's never done anything wrong to me, and we have a mutual friend who keeps warning me, don't spend time with that guy because he's going to talk trash about you behind your back and he's going to be terrible. But I haven't seen evidence of that, and I have to understand that this is maybe a conflict between their interpersonal relationship. The fact that I'm reaching a conclusion based on the available evidence is not a problem, because my conclusion is tentative, subject to revision, and I'm only as confident as the evidence for it. And so where I completely trusted one person, as soon as I started getting information, all of a sudden my trust in them declines. But what you're doing is saying, I'm just going to trust that this is the case. I can't demonstrate it. A bunch of people around me think the same thing, and I love them, and it seems to be helpful and useful to me, but I can't demonstrate it. But I'm going to live my life according to these edicts, even though I don't know that they're true. That is a problem for me. And I don't understand why it's not a problem for anybody who cares about truth.
You know, there's a song by Bon Jovi and by Poison, the 80s metal band. Then again, I'm a huge fan of that too. So there's a song by them. Both of them sound the same title, but different way of singing it. Something to believe in.
Yep.
And the fact of the matter is, people everywhere all the world need something to believe in, because somehow or the other, everyone is lost. Everybody needs to find some sort of thing to be confident about. So when you pray to somebody, it gives you some sort of confidence that there's someone out there listening to me, and maybe it gives you. You see.
Now we're back. Now we're back to the thing that you mentioned in the last call and this call. I don't give a rat's ass if praying to a fictional God makes you feel better. I care about whether or not the God is fictional or not. I fully acknowledge that people can feel better after rubbing a lucky rabbit's foot, after putting on their lucky socks, after spinning in circles 3 times or knocking on wood. Those are things that are superstition. I care about whether or not they're true. People don't need something to believe in the context you're trying to claim that they do. I'm fine with a metaphorical notion that we all need something to believe in, but I don't need a God to believe in.
Well, Dan Dennett wrote a book on that very topic, and I can't remember the name of it, but he was talking about belief in belief.
Yeah, that's Breaking the Spell.
Breaking the Spell. And so if you're willing to do reading, that might be a good book for you to read sometime.
Or you could go see Dumbo, because Dan references Dumbo as well, because Dumbo's magic feather, the feather doesn't actually give, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it.
This is a movie that's coming out.
There's a new Dumbo.
An old movie redone.
The feather doesn't actually give Dumbo magic powers, and that's the point of the story. And yet Dumbo believes that the feather does. I'm getting another update.
Uh-oh.
No, you're wrong. So those guys actually went out and got what looks like bottles of champagne, and Eric is now holding up something saying we're $50 away.
He's blowing the money already.
But I just got a note from the back room.
That counts against yours.
I just got a note from the back room that we're $38 away, and we have 5 minutes left in the show.
Hey.
So I will be donating $40 by...
Okay.
Sorry that we had to do that during your call, Sad.
It's okay. It's okay, Matt.
Okay, we've got some audience members doing it too.
You see, Matt, I guess what it all boils down to is I don't know how much. Like I have a friend last week. I met him while I was smoking hookah, and he told me that he heard my call with Tracy, and he said that wait, I know something that that he truly believes the Higgs boson, whatever that is.
Higgs boson.
Is the Higgs boson.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me.
It was a theoretical physics concept that was demonstrated to be consistent with observations at the Large Hadron Collider.
It's according to him, it says that it's demonstration that God exists.
Oh, bullshit. It's called the God particle, which was a terrible name that some science enthusiasts gave it. It's not a particle that in any way ties to God or proves God. What it is it's what gives matter mass. And I'll probably get an email saying I'm wrong about that. And that's fine, because I'm not a physicist. But I pretty much tell you that I would bet that nobody who actually worked on the Higgs boson stuff actually thinks that it proves God. And if they do, they're still wrong.
And if you want some good music, go listen to the LHC rap.
On that note, I'm going to go ahead and end this call, Sad. I really appreciate you calling. I've got to wrap up a couple things in the next few minutes. Feel free to call us again and talk heathen. But I do enjoy talking with you. sincerely, despite the fact that the thing that you're trying to make excuses for last week is abominable. But we can deal with that another time.
Sure, and I'd also like you guys to check out Coke Studio on YouTube, and the band Junoon from Pakistan. They're amazing. And they've been known as the U2 of South Asia. You should definitely check them out.
Send us a link, because I'm not going to remember it and get it right now, but send us a link.